On this episode of Underneath the City Lights with Eddie Dynamite, we got realtor, appraiser, and black business owner, Coach Burd. Sit back, relax, catch a contact of this info. What's happening, man? Welcome to another episode of Underneath the City Lights with Eddie Dynamite. And I got a very special one for y'all today, man. You know, it's a communiversity over here. We all about learning and teaching. And it's gonna be heavy tonight. Get your pencils, paper together, you know what I'm saying? Pay close attention, because you're gonna learn a lot tonight. Tonight, man, I got my guy on here, you know what I'm saying, realtor, appraiser, you know what I'm saying, black business owner, my dog, Coach Daniel Burden. How you doing, brother? Welcome to the show.
Man, I'm better than I deserve.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So tell us, Bird, man, when we getting started, man, into this thing, man. Tell us where you from, man, and how you got into the real estate game.
Oh man, so I'm from the great city of Moncks Corner. So born and raised right here in Charleston. Well, Moncks Corner. Everybody calls it Charleston because most folks don't know what Moncks Corner is. So, but how I got into real estate, well, I mean, it goes back a long way. So starting off with my great grandmother, which is Lovey or Bertha Castle, depending on, what you knew her as. But, growing up, I always heard the stories, she owned half of Moncks Corner, is what they said. So she owned a whole bunch of property and stuff. And her father owned a whole bunch of property and stuff. And so I don't know, I guess that side of it, the real estate side, the property side of it, ownership of that side of it was always there from the beginning. Right. So fast forward to, let's see, I'm 38 now, so I got into real estate when I was 30. So coming right up on 8 years. So I was spent. Hold on, real quick. Turn my fan on there. Okay. So at 30 years old or 29 years old, I was actually working. I'd been in insurance for 10 years. I was working, doing life and health in the insurance industry for the last 10 years. And a little warm in here. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, do your thing.
Perspiration going on there. But in my 10th year, I was a director for a brokerage over in Daniel Island, sales manager, whole 9 yards. So they downsized. And at 29 years old, I found myself looking at a crossroads, really, like, what am I going to do next? Right. So at that time, though, before this happened, this was like September when I was 29. So probably 6 months before that happened, I had a guy who had moved to Charleston as a result of Hurricane Katrina, and he became our chief financial officer with the company that I was working with. And he had this thing that he would always tell me. So just backtracking a little bit here and getting to how I ended up in real estate, which was he was really big on quality people. And so the company that I was working for, because of the way that I had structured my pay, they would when they did their layoffs, they would go through whenever they got into financial straits, a small business. Nevertheless, they were successful, but they do their layoffs based on who was making the most money. And so because I had worn so many different hats in the business, in the company, a lot of my money wasn't W-2, it was 1099. So I was on these bonus structures, commissions, and all this stuff. So I was one of the higher paid people, but I kind of flew under the radar because 50% of my money was coming outside of W-2, which is paid by a different department. So anyways, this great guy named Andy Bro. So anytime they would go through layoffs with the company, they would always do it based upon, who's making most money and whatnot. But Andy would always say, no, you keep your good people. You always keep your good people. You can always rebuild with quality, good people. And that's something that really stuck with me. So when Andy finally got laid off and let go, I realized at that point, this was about 6 months before the September happened. I was 29 years old. But I realized at that point that, okay, I no longer have my protection. The that's going to my buffer, making sure that me being one of the quality people, my job was always secure. So at that point is when I started really getting into real estate. This is before I got into the real estate sales side of things. This was I need to generate passive income. And so one of the things that I did is I got into Airbnb at that time, 10 years ago, got into Airbnb at that time and started building some good passive income that way. My dad and I converted the home that we that I grew up in, into a multifamily duplex. And so we started some rental that way. So at that point, I was making some decent money outside of the job there.
Right.
So when I did finally get laid, and I also started a cell phone accessories company. So I had 20 some odd stores that convenience stores, etc., that I supplied all the cell phone accessories for store.
Right.
And a quick little aside for that, this is one of the cool experiences I had with that, which was I was going to a barbershop one day and I forgot my wallet. And this is one of the things, one of the stories I told to my nephew, and I tell people all the time. It's a cool thing about entrepreneurship. But I was going to the barbershop and I had forgotten my wallet. So on my cell phone accessories, everything was on consignment. So I stopped the store. They sell the accessories. I come through, write them an invoice for what they sold. They pay me money. So I forgot my wallet, headed to the barbershop, and I had a store that was right around the corner from the barbershop. So instead of me turning around, it's before, Cash App and all that thing was so common that you just Zelle somebody or Cash App, whatever case may be.
Right.
The crib, get my wallet. I just went to the store, restocked them, gave them an invoice, got paid cash in hand, and I went on to the barbershop and was, and paid my barber. But that was one of the cool things, or is one of the cool things about owning a business or having something product out there. Of course, the thing that I like about that, or there's another thing, when Andy left, I realized, hey, on a 360 view, I need to make sure that I'm making money while I'm not working.
Correct.
Cell phone accessories, that was, hey, anytime somebody stopped at a gas station, I'm at home chilling. Somebody lost a charger, need to get a charger, whatever the case may be. Same thing. I was living downtown, so it was like, hey, I need to get some of this tourism money, So that's the Airbnb came about. And of course, when you do have long-term rentals, when you do it on a per day basis, every night that someone's staying in a long-term rental, just like a short-term, you're getting paid.
Right.
So that's what got my mind going on real estate and understanding the power of real estate and just being able to make money when you're not there. So fast forward to, so I established this residual income, or this passive income coming in. And then when I got to getting laid off, my best friend, my homegirl, Africa, she called me. She said, man, I'm going to get my real estate license. And I was like, well, shit, I'm going to get mine too then. And so I just went ahead, took the test or whatever. And I, getting into real estate, it is like starting a business. So you got to it takes a little while before you start making money. And I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where not only did I, have those businesses or different streams of income coming in, but I also negotiated a good severance with the company that I was working with at that point. So I had the ability, or I had the money to get started in the business with real estate. And, 10 years later, or I guess 8 years later, 8 years later, technically, I find myself here in real estate. And in the last 4 years, I've been on the appraiser side as well. So
that's dope.
Real estate.
So before you get into that, let me ask you the big question, because I follow you all the time on your page. You always give great tips. But before I even get into that side, the number one question: how important is Black home ownership?
Man, how important? I mean, that's a loaded question. I would say that Black ownership, home ownership, is probably I mean, I don't know if I could rank it, but I would say it's got to be top two, top three things of importance. And this is kind of how I look at it. You know, when the Constitution was formulated, if you didn't, what of course it's excluded black people, but if you didn't own land, you couldn't even vote. I mean, it wasn't written for you, wasn't talking to you, wasn't representing you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so owning a piece of America, owning a piece of land gave you power, you know, voting power, gave you authority, gave you a piece of this country. So for starters, if you don't own any of it, you know, going back a few hundred years, I mean, it hadn't changed that much, you know. So having some ownership is important that way. But then the other side of it is this. Over since COVID happened, I mean, this just sticks with me. When COVID happened, you know, I would be doing my lead generation, talking to folks, and 90% of my clients are black people. And I would probably say of the 90%, probably 70% are women. And so black women, and make up the vast majority of my clients. But anyways, talking to our people, my folks, just reaching out to them. Hey, you know anybody looking to buy or sell? Just constantly having that conversation with people. And a lot of people were like, oh man, we're scared. We don't know what's going to happen. And the whole 9 yards, we don't know what's going to happen. And we were fortunate enough, you know, my team, my crew, we were fortunate enough that, you know, our approach was a little bit different. It wasn't so much, we didn't know what was going to happen. There was some uncertainty there, but we were just buying everything that we could. And I just had a conversation with a brother yesterday. And he was telling me that, you know, he has a bunch of people that are ready to buy, and they kind of just been kind of sitting on the sideline because of the uncertainties. But get back to the importance of home ownership is I've had so many clients, brothers, sisters, black folk, that bought properties during those uncertain times and did nothing with the property. I mean, hardly changed the air filter over the last 3-4 years, and have been able to cash out 100,000, 150,000, 160,000, either through selling or keeping it and using the HELOC, whether it be a HELOC, cash out, refi, whatever the case may be, so that not only would they have the liquidity in their pocket to make whatever move they need to make or whatever, but now they're able to leverage that property to start businesses, to do I've had people sit down with me, $80,000 of debt that they're servicing $1,500 a month, take a HELOC, $500 origination fee for a HELOC, take the HELOC, which is just leveraging the equity of HELOC stands for home equity line of credit, but leveraging the equity in their house to pay off the $80,000 of debt, get titles to vehicles, and take that same $80,000 plus maybe $500 for origination fee, and now take that payment down to $700 a month on the same debt. Only it's leveraged by the equity in the house, and you paid off the asset, so you could always liquidate it, whether it be a car or whatever it is, sell it if it came down to, because now you have the titles. But you take the same $80,000 of debt, transfer that over to your home equity line of credit, and bring down your actual money out of pocket from $1,500 a month to $800 a month. Just small things like that when we think about home ownership, we're thinking about, oh, do I want to live there forever? Is that where I want to live? Or whatever, man. We bought places in the hood just because we knew what was coming to the hood. We knew it was changing over.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it comes down to strategy, but ultimately over the if you had no strategy at all, you just bought a house and just said, hey, I'm going to pay it down. I'm going to be able to write off the interest. I'm going to be able to write off depreciation, whatever it is. I'm just going to hold it, pay down the balance. So I get a little bit of control over inflated rates. Because when you're renting a property, your landlord come to you and say, hey, well, we got to go up on the rent. Might be for a few reasons. Number one, the county came and assessed the property and said, hey, your property's worth more, so your taxes are going up. Right. The insurance company said, well, shit, you in Charleston and the hurricanes hitting all the time, and last year was a rough season, so now your insurance going up. Right. So now the landlord is saying, hey, well, you know, we're going to have to go up $600 a month on your rent. Now, obviously, your taxes, just like your or your insurance especially, it rarely goes up to a round number. Like your insurance might be $3,204.63 for a 12-month policy, but when your landlord gives you your rental rate increase, they're gonna go up to the nearest 100, round up to the next 100, and it won't be in your favor. So when you own it, you have a little bit of control when you have a fixed rate mortgage. Yes, your insurance and your taxes may change, but you're not adjusting for profit. And the landlord is adjusting for increasing for profit as well as expenses, right?
Right.
So you hedge yourself against that. But the other side is, like I said, if you had no plan at all, you just bought the asset and treated it as this is something that's going to appreciate and I'm going to pay down the balance over time. Even if the market gives you a change or we get a fall off in the market, even though supply and demand says we're pretty well hedged against that in this market right now. But even if that happens, just over time, real estate tends to be a very stable, it's not a linear increase. Sometimes it spikes like it did in COVID, and we saw the greatest real estate wealth appreciation through real estate than we've ever seen in our adult lives. You know what I mean? You got to go back, early 2000 was the wild, wild west, but, I didn't graduate high school through 2005. So as far as my working or adult life, this was the first time I was able to participate in it. And we saw tremendous gains. I mean, from a net worth standpoint, go ahead.
So not to cut you off. So with all that you said, and the people that you said you worked with that came in when we had COVID going on, when they said people weren't buying anything, weren't buying any homes, have you seen a rise in Black home ownership since that time? Or because I seem like from social media to different things that we get presented, they're telling us that these things are more important, and it seems like people are trying to make more steps to do that type of thing for themselves.
Right. So I would say, okay, so we have to deal with the statistics, right? Statistics say we're being outpaced. So even if we're buying more, we're being outpaced by our white and our brown counterparts, right? And home ownership. Nevertheless, we still have a lot of people buying, and I always pop my collar to the sisters, because the sisters, for whatever reason, they will buy a house. Brothers is like, I got this I need to do, I got that, let me
see online. You see the sisters with the soul, they holding up the keys, you know what I'm saying?
So so the sisters are still buying. But I would say that during COVID, so many things happened. In my personal experience, the home ownership, we had a lot of people that were scared to make moves, but we had a lot of Black folks who were buying homes, right? So when we compare it to our white or our brown counterparts, they were buying more than we were, but nevertheless, they were still buying homes. So, and at that time, when COVID happened, you had the interest rate come down to nearly nothing. Lowest rates our parents have seen, not just us, but lowest rates and forever. So now you've got, and then of course the lenders start making adjustments to make things more affordable. They need to write loans, so you start getting a lot of $0 down and all kind of other incentives and things to purchase. Now what we have going on right now is on the other side of COVID, rates have gone up, and the appreciation has just shot up through the roof. And those folks who could afford to buy during that time, they no longer can afford to buy. I get the most common thing that I get right now with folks is like, hey, I want a 4-bedroom house under $1,500 a month. Like, well, you build it, I'll sell it for you. You know what I'm saying? Because it doesn't exist.
Right.
And so to answer your question though, personal experience, folks who were definitely taking action. Those were some of, I had real good years, during COVID, and then on the other side of COVID. But I think there's so many people that missed that wave.
Right.
That, it's really disappointing. But on the other side of it, opportunity is still there. You have to be a little more strategic now than you could be then. Because one of the things, what they call house hacking, which is, you buy a home, live in it, and then you use it as a rental and go and buy the next property. Well, back then it was a lot easier to do that because there were so many options. You're talking about buying a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath house or something like that, and it's $800, $900 a month, whether you were doing bedroom rentals or you was like, well, I'm throwing it on the market, rent it for $1,500 a month, and then I got $500. It's not great margins, but it's better than nothing.
Better than nothing, right?
Or $700, whatever. Well, real quick, the cost of the asset met what the going market rent was, and so that ability to do that kind of dissipated because the housing just became so expensive. So you have to be more strategic now on how you do it. But if you think about it and you plan for it and you're thinking not just, and the thing that I always tell young folks, anybody really, but particularly young folks, when you buy your first house, buy it as an investment. And what I mean by that is you're going to be thinking about the next move, because when you go to buy the next house, you can rent the house you're in right now. I'll give you an example. If you own a home right now, say you pay $2,000 a month in mortgage, the market rate rent is $2,500. Well, you can go to your bank, you get pre-approved or whatever bank you go to buy your next home. You can have a lease in place for when you move out of the house. So this person is going to be moving in, taking over the lease. Well, they can give you 75% of that rental income can be applied towards your actual income, and along whatever your W-2 or whatever your job, 1099, whatever your work income is. So it'll eat up a lot of that debt that you have in the existing home. So there's still abilities to move forward, and using that house, you can use it as income. So if you're in a situation where you bought a house, several years ago, and maybe your mortgage is, $800 a month, and the market rate rent is $2,500 a month, well, they'll use 75% of, $2,500 a month as income. So instead of you just being qualified for whatever $50,000 can buy if that's your salary, well, now you're qualified for $50,000 plus 25% or 75% of $2,500 a month. That's additional income, which moves you up to the next tier of what you can afford. The other side of it is when you are buying a house, if you're buying a house that has an ADU, or if you're buying a house that's a duplex or multifamily, whatever the case may be, that market rate rent, again, even without a lease in place, can be used to qualify you for that house. What that means is it may be easier for you to buy a $700,000 house with an ADU in the backyard than it would be for you to buy a $400,000 home. Because now you have additional income that you're contributing. That's being contributed to your income to offset your debt income ratio, et cetera. So you just have to be more strategic now. That's it. The opportunity is still there because the inventory is still low and housing is still an issue. So if you have the right strategy in place and you buy it with a purpose, and you make that first purchase a business decision, I'm thinking about this long term to set me up for my next move, then you're talking about potentially having an asset that's going to, whether you liquidate or leverage, give you a couple $100,000 to be able to do the next thing. And the cool thing about real estate is, man, you're talking about some subprime lender borrowers, right? Which is anybody with under a 670 credit score. So people hear prime or whatever, because it's anybody with under a 670 credit score. You got a 580 credit score, the bank, and you have the income to justify it. Bank could give you $500,000 to somebody with 580 credit score. Now try getting $500,000 from in anything else, including student loans, with a 580 credit score. Good luck. You know what I'm saying? And if you're putting down 10%, if you're talking about FHA, you can go down as low as a 500 credit score. So my thing is this. So if that's basically the cheapest money you can get, period, is through home ownership, and they're going to give you $500,000 with a 580 credit score, then you need to make it count, is how I look at it. So, but the opportunity is still there. Just definitely you gotta employ a lot more strategy. But if you do it the right way, man, it'll set you up. It'll launch you into the future. You hear that? I'll keep on rolling until I see you pop back up here. There we go.
My bad, Burd.
You good, brother?
Okay. That being said, man, what are the most disparities that you see over the years that as far as our people deal with, as far as trying to get into a home? Because like you said, all of those things that you said are definitely business moves and steps in order to go in the right direction. But what about somebody that's just saying, man, I don't know which way to go. I know I need to get a home. I want a home. I'm in a position where I don't, like I said, I just don't know where to go. I don't know the first step. You know what I mean? What are the most disparities that you see in your career that you've seen that people that you've had to say, oh man, I can't help you, or don't look like you're gonna be able to get this, brother, or I'm gonna need you to go on and do these things before you can even come back to me to be able to be qualified to get this home. What are the most things that you see that the biggest problems in as far as that affecting our community?
Well, I think one of the big things, man, is and this is a cultural thing, but we have what I've experienced and what I've seen is that we have it's almost like a fear of absolute. And what I mean by that is we're very general people. So when we communicate, it be like, about that, around that, you know what I'm saying? Very general. But in this game, it's a lot of mathematics, right? And so it's absolute. And instead of us getting the absolute information or answers, like I'll have a conversation with someone, or sometimes people want to talk about buying a house, but they don't want to talk to the lender to get pre-approved. You know what I mean? They don't want to get the information, or they say, well, I want to buy a house in 6 months. And I say, well, let's go ahead and talk with the lender. Let's see what your debt to income ratio is, get an idea of if we need to change something. Is it something we need to pay off? Right. And sometimes, when you're trying to maneuver credit, it's not always about paying things off. There's so many other things we can do. I'd rather be adding a trade line or be adding yourself as authorized user to someone else's credit card, calling the credit card company and say, hey, can you increase my limit? That'll drop my utilization and we can move points that way. There's so many things we can do. But a lot of folks they're not real comfortable with getting the absolute information. It's like the same thing. I don't want to go to the doctor and get the diagnosis. I'd rather just not know. You know what I mean? Like, it's that type of thing that kind of keeps us from being able to move forward, because we don't have all the details, and we cannot plan properly. Everything is going to be kind of like, would it be, or if this was the case, or this and third. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off, put it all out on the table, all cards on the table. Let's see what we're working with, and then we can put together a very applicable plan. Other than that, I think the biggest thing is unrealistic expectations, man. From what things change so quickly with real estate, and people still folks who haven't bought or haven't been really in the market in the last 5 years, and even shorter than that, like last 2-3 years, they still think that they can buy a $400,000 house, and that $400,000 house is going to have 4 to 5 bedrooms, and it's going to cost them $1,500 a month. And so when they actually do go through and speak with the lender, and this is right now in the beginning of 2025, one of the easiest things to do if you want to talk about giving a relative idea of what a payment would be, just so people know give them something to think about. Right. This could be offset by a number of factors, down payment, credit score, whatever case can be. But the general buyer, the easiest way to calculate in your mind what your mortgage payment would be, and that's PITI, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, is to use a payment factor of 7. And you multiply 7 times the unit of 1,000. So if we're talking about a $300,000 house, there's 300 units of 1,000. So you would multiply 7 times 300 to give you an idea of what your payment would be, which would be around $2,100 a month.
Oh, I never knew.
Yeah. So, I mean, that number's changed. That number always changes. So rates come down or rates go up, taxes, insurance, whole 9 yards. That payment factor can change. So that's not a solid number. You can't go to your bank and say, no, this is what it's supposed to be. But to give you an idea,
right.
if you see a house and you're like, well, these
You
houses
got to
all around
tell
this
us that
way.
now, Burd, because we'll run up in that bank quick. Hey, listen, I heard my man told me this what it is now. You know what I mean?
This
Don't
is
try to
this is
run that.
right. This is quick back of the napkin math right here. So
Right.
give you an idea what it is. A $300,000 house be around $2,100 a month, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Could be lower, could be higher. There's a HOA, just different number of factors that affect that. Well, my point being is
it's gonna be somewhere around that area.
It'll be somewhere around that. But
Mm-hmm.
we have the expectation is they're going off of what their cousin paid 5 years ago. You know what I mean? So whatever the case may be, or they go online, they see, okay, I'm gonna put this in mortgage calculator, and the mortgage calculator is calculating principal and interest.
Most definitely.
And it's not accounting for taxes nor insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So they expect it to be okay, well, $1,200 a month, and then they actually speak with the lender and they're going, what in the world's going on? I'm going to buy a $300,000 house. And then the other thing is what a $300,000 house looks like today versus what it looked like, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And the problem, one of the big problems is there's a cost of waiting. Now, we don't know that the future says that the properties are always going to go up. Over time, it will, but we don't know if it's going to go up next year. But what we're seeing in Charleston, a lot of areas, we're seeing 10, 15. There are some places that leveled off and are kind of the market not going up, not going down. We haven't really seen that a whole lot, but there's still places that are 10, 15% up year on year, year over year. So you're talking about a 10% gain. If you don't like a $300,000 house this year, well, you're not going to like the $330,000 house next year because it's the same house. It just costs $30,000 more. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, sometimes you got to make a decision. Hey, I need to jump in to something so that I'm not, paying $30,000 more next year. And if I am getting that 10% year on year, increase, and if this continues, then in 3 years I could potentially have, $90,000 of equity in the home. And then if I want to refi or cash out or sell and take, $50,000 and put it towards another house, I give you those options. But sitting on the sideline, if you want to be a homeowner, doesn't always benefit. There's a lot of factors that could go into that. Maybe you're finishing school, or you're going to get a higher paying job, or you don't know if you want to live here, or whatever the case may be. But I'm just saying, if you are able to buy and you're just like, I'm waiting for it to come down, well, that day may never come, or it may be so far down the road that it's irrelevant.
Something happened and you don't have the money, or anything could go down.
Right. And I got people that who sat on the sideline. I had clients who sat on the sideline, and when they finally they didn't like what they saw when they, were able to buy before. And by the time they got into the game and, had some family changes as far as kids and whatever else, and they were ready to buy, then they're paying 3 times what the mortgage was at the point in which they first approached me to buy. Then I've got some folks who didn't buy, and they probably will never buy because of, what the housing prices right now. So the other thing is, that I encourage people to do is, man, multi-generational living, man. It goes back to that ADU or, a mother-in-law suite or something like that, of buying a house together, or coming together and buying something that has multiple units, whether that be, you can buy as a primary residence up to 4 units. So quadplex, triplex, whatever case may be. Now, obviously, you're talking about buying with potentially family or friends, and how that gets, but the point is, if you can secure, I look at it like this: if I'm qualified for $200,000 and 3 other people qualify for $200,000, can none of us afford nothing that we like? That's just flat out. Can we come together with 800,000 and maybe afford something that we like? It might be able to catch a quadplex on the low or something like that. And that's just my thought process. It's something or nothing.
Or nothing. So that's a good segue to what I was going to ask you next. Give me, and this is, like you say, this is for somebody green, don't know anything. Give me the complete process that I need to come to you. I'm coming to you, say, Burd, Coach Burd, I found a spot, me and the wife, or me by myself, or whatever it may be. This is what I want, trying to buy a home. Take me through the complete process, what we need to do from beginning to end.
All right. So it's really short and sweet. So the first thing we want to do is get a pre-approval. Let's go ahead. If you come to me and you tell me, hey, I'm ready to buy a house, me and my wife are ready to buy a house, first thing I'm going to ask you is, are you already pre-approved? Because I need to know what, if you're already pre-approved, and you may be, I need to know what it is, because there's a lot of factors that we have to consider. You know, if you're interested in condos and you're pre-approved for FHA mortgage, well, the condo has to be on the FHA approved list. So if it's not, that's out. So I need to know what type of financing, how much it is. The other thing is HOAs. People say, well, I want to buy a townhome because they see the price are a little bit cheaper, or a condo, the price a little bit cheaper. Condos have regimes, and those fees are a lot higher typically than HOAs. So that's going to offset or reduce what you're approved for, because that has to be factored into your monthly payment or your debt to income ratio for the future process. But getting to your question, so what are the steps? First thing, get pre-approved. That's number one, because that's going to set all the guidelines, parameters. Should we be looking at $300,000 homes, or should we look, or can we look at $500,000 homes? Or if all you like is $500,000 homes, you know, maybe we need to be looking in a different area. Maybe we could find what you're looking for a lot less if we move out to, you know, the country, or we go a little further north or a little further south, or whatever the case may be. So that's the first thing. Once you get your pre-approval, now we know what we're working with. We set up a search. In addition to that, we talk about, you know, what type of what it's going to cost you. What does an offer need to look like? You know, how much capital you have, because you're going to have your down payment depending on what type of loan. If you're VA or something like that, you may have a $0 down payment, or even let's say you have 100% finance, you know, USDA, whatever case, and you have your closing cost. That purchase price closing cost may be the same amount of what your down payment would have been, 3 to 4%. So do we need to be asking the seller to pay closing costs? And then, of course, we have some fees along the way from once the offer is accepted, outside of the earnest money that you put down, which earnest is just some skin in the game. You saying, hey, I'm putting this money up in the escrow account, saying that I'm committed to buying, depending on the purchase price of the home. Could be anywhere from $500 to 1% of the purchase price. So anyways, you put that down. So that's about, let's just call it $1,000, just so you know what you need to have in your pocket. Other thing you're going to have is appraisal. Appraisal might cost you $500. There you go. The bank's going to want that after you get you get the deal ratified or under contract. The other costs you may have are home inspections, CL 100, which is a termite moisture inspection. So those inspections might cost you about $700. So now we're up to $1,500 plus $700, so that's $2,200. Let me see if there's any other fees that you may have had. I mean, that's for the most part, that's all your fees before closing. And if the seller is paying your closing costs, you get a lot of that back, other than the inspection fee. And the earnest, of course, is applied towards your down payment. And if it's 100% financing, then you get your earnest back at closing anyway. So the only skin you have in the game is, you know, if the seller's paying your closing costs, is really the inspections, which is like $700. But it's about $2,200 that'll come out of your pocket in this scenario. So I would expect $2,000 to $3,000 to do that. Now, you can do a lot of those things. You can do on credit cards if need be, so it doesn't have to come out of your pocket per se. But I've had people move in to homes, buy homes with absolutely nothing out of pocket. And it is absolutely possible to do it. And so the short answer is, first thing is get pre-approved. We set up your search. We talk about, you know, with the lender. If you're working with a good lender, then we'll know right then what we need to have as far as liquidity, how we need to structure a deal. If you're not working with a good lender, then you might be in the dark, and you might not figure that out until after you put an offer in the house, what everything needs to look like. But hopefully, you know, your agent will tell you beforehand, we need to make sure that we have an understanding of this. So, you know, we're not tying up a property or putting an offer on the property that we just don't have the liquidity to execute.
Right.
But that would be the steps.
Okay. That's you broke it down right from the top to the bottom. Yeah, y'all heard it. You know what I'm saying? If you need to run that back, you got that's why we got this here, man. It's the communiversity. You know what I'm saying? Coach Burd here to put y'all on game. So Coach Burd, now we see what's going on with this government, the administration. First of all, before I go into that, because me and you, I mean, me and you been friends for a very, very long time, man. And you follow a lot of the same things, and you got a lot of the same principles that I got. You know what I'm saying? You know, FBA. You know what I'm saying? You know, we brothers. You know, we represent. You know what I mean? Our culture. You know, so so this is sorry about that. This is a question I want to ask for people that don't know how how close is how involved, not close, how involved is the government when it comes to home buying and things that dealing with home ownership?
So on the surface level,
Mm-hmm.
the government is very involved for two factors. One, of course, you got the FHA, which is government backed, and you have VA as well, which are really, really common loans for so obviously VA is for veterans and the FHA is for, normal people. But those secured loans represent a big share of home purchasing. So from that standpoint, I mean, the government is making it possible to buy homes. And then there's a bunch of other regulations and stuff that they're doing, that they have done, like on my side, for example, on the appraiser side of things.
Mm-hmm.
They have AMCs, which if you're an appraiser, you pretty much hate them universally. But those are appraisal management companies that are supposed to make sure that when you go to purchase a home, the loan officer or the bank or whatever the case may be isn't just finding an appraiser that's just going to meet the price regardless of what the house actually is worth. So you know that you're getting an unbiased opinion of value. So you're not overpaying for a house, and this creates stability in the market where there's not a bunch of upside down houses being written right out the gate. It's fair market value. So the government's very involved from that standpoint. Right. At this point in time, there's no oppressive things that I can easily identify that the government is doing to keep people from purchasing.
Okay.
I think the government I think home ownership in probably the history of the country is probably the fairest it's ever been.
Oh, wow.
I think the only time that it was probably, and I don't know if fair would be the right word, but I would say probably the greatest opportunity we've ever had as far as our community is concerned. And this is one of the things that's always perplexed me because, being from Moncks Corner, one of the things that always blew my mind is the black folk in Moncks Corner. When I came up, when I was in school, we had more money than the white folks. I mean, you had a few folks that were like,
that's true.
Their parents might have owned a business in town or was an attorney or whatever the case may be. But, it felt like per capita that the white folks were pretty poor in that area, and all the black folks own land. The families own land. Mm-hmm. And so it's weird being black in this country and being in the South and the dynamics being that way.
Yes.
Where because you have your enclaves of white society where that is very poor. But being where we're from, where it was diverse, just the black folk seem to live a little better than the white folks.
Right.
And so it gets back to the time where, we had obviously the Great Depression and things like that. Mm-hmm. After we got out of get out of Reconstruction, and we had the Freedmen Bank, and they took a bunch of our wealth and whatnot. Black folks stopped trusting banks, had money in the sofa and the mattress, the whole 9 yards. Right. And so when they were going through the Great Depression, obviously we still had our fields, we had all this stuff going on, and we still had money. So we had the ability to buy a lot of those properties. And right coming out of Reconstruction, a lot of the properties that we gained, we lost because we didn't know how to properly execute wills and all these other things. We lost property, etc. But we got a lot of that stuff back during Great Depression because we were the only people who had money.
That's a dope history. That's dope.
So I don't know if the word for that time would be fair, but that was a great opportunity for black folks to acquire property. And since then, I think from an equality standpoint or ability or no oppression, they made it really tough on us as appraisers to do any type of discriminatory things and deciding what the value of the home doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right.
It's definitely possible.
Right.
But it's we got to cross a lot of T's and dot a lot of I's, and there's a lot of oversight that didn't exist before. But since maybe the Great Depression, I think probably we hadn't had a greater opportunity to for home ownership, land ownership than we do right now.
Okay.
Of course, COVID,
right.
That was across the board.
And that was another one of my things, just dealing with COVID and, like I said, this, what we got going on with this presidency we got right now, everything sky high. Some people, groceries here, there, just tight for a whole lot of people. So I saw you had a great, because a couple of these things I want to ask or just these or based on some of those short videos that you had on Instagram, because you got great topics that you just expound a little on, but I think they really need to hear, I'm saying, a little more, because it's real what you're saying. So the first question I have is people having a hard time, and I saw you discuss this, people having a hard time paying their mortgage, tight, they pinch pennies from every corner, from here, just trying to make sure they got a roof over their head. What can they do? I saw you mention something about that, man. Can you expound on that? Tell me what can they do to kind of maybe lessen the load, or trying to help themselves along.
So, if I understand your question right, you're specifically talking about like if you can't make your mortgage payment or something. Right. All right, cool. Yeah. So this is just something across the board. This is not limited to home ownership. Mm-hmm. This is across the board. If you have debt, I don't care if you owe your cousin. Okay. If you have debt, the best thing you can do for yourself is communicate with the debtor. And if you just have that conversation, that transparency, because there's deferments, right? Mm-hmm. So in a phone call, now every lender is going to be a little bit different, and some lenders there are a few out there like SE Housing, I think, has no deferment, which SE Housing are the ones that will give you, 100% financing for first-time home buyers, and they have programs for second-time home buyers, et cetera, et cetera. Paul Metal Hero. Won't get into all those things, but the point being, if you just call them and say, hey, I have a financial hardship, they may say, hey, well, I got to ask you a few questions, answer a few questions, whatever the case may be. They may mention that you have to sign, but normally they give you anywhere from 4 to 6 months of just no payments. Now, what that means is that there's somebody else making those payments for you. So they tack that on to the balance of your mortgage. So what that looks like in, I guess, layman's term would be, let's say you have $100,000. Or let's do it this way. Let's say you have a house that's worth $200,000 and you owe $100,000 on the house, and you're like, well, I can't make my payments. And let's say it even gets so bad that whatever, create the scenario. I had to move for a new job and I haven't been able to sell my house there, but I have to pay for housing here. Or hell, shit, things just got tight. Whatever the reason, $100,000 is what you owe on the house. $200,000 what the house is worth. So you got $100,000 of equity in that house. And you say, hey, I can't make these $2,000 payments anymore. They say, well, we'll give you 4 months without payments. So 4 times 2 is $8,000, and it's all relative math. So when you go to sell that house, that $100,000 equity is going to be reduced $8,000 because you got to pay back, the third party that's making the payments for you. It's not like they just say, hey, well, you just missed the payments and you're good to go. Those actual payments are totaled up and added to the balance of your mortgage. But the point being, when you have hardships like that, the bank doesn't want to repossess the home. They do not want you to default. Deferment is an option, and it's not just banks. You do it with you. If you own a car, you call them and say, hey, can I defer a payment or two to the end of this loan? They typically have a document. All of them have to ask you the same questions because you have to prove financial hardship. And they ask you a few questions typically, make you sign a document, move it to the end of the loan. The cool part about it is, when you're doing stuff like that, it's not reported as missed payments or whatever the case may be. You can protect your credit and not just have your credit go to complete shreds. But the deferment is an option typically when you own a home. Which again, the cool part about that specifically with home ownership is, if you have to go into a deferment and they give you 4 months or 6 months or whatever time, let's say they only give you 4 months. Mm-hmm. Try that with your landlord. Hey, I'm having a tough time right now. I just lost my job. Can I go 4 months? Nah, your grace period is 5 days. And then whatever he decide after that, on the 6th day, he can go down to the county
Right.
And you up out of there, Jack.
Out of there. That's right.
You know. So when you own a house, you can get you 4 months, and even if you were to say absolutely nothing to them, which would be crazy, but if you were to say absolutely nothing to them, you still, before they foreclose, you probably have 6 months to a year before you're actually ejected from the home. Again, try that with your landlord. And the other thing is, when you do make your mortgage payment, you get 16-day grace period without any late payments. So if you pay by the 15th, late payments, right? When your mortgage due on the 1st. But not only that, you have 30 days, before, as long as you pay before the 1st, you will pay a penalty for being late, but they don't report it as a late to the credit bureau. Right. So you could literally be paying your mortgage, 29, 30 days after the due date and never have a late show up on your credit report, which gives you an additional, depending on how you do the math, anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, which could be 3 to 4 additional pay periods in order to get the money together to pay your mortgage, versus, again, try that with your landlord, Jack. It ain't going to work. Nah. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the benefits to home ownership as well. And if you get into a real bad situation, lose a job, whatever case may be, obviously right now, most people who own a home have some equity in it, and they could sell that property fairly quickly, fairly easily, and walk away with money, as opposed to, I'm evicted, I need to find a storage or something to put my place, so I'm moving in with mama. Or at least if you do move in with mama, maybe you have $20,000, you can cut her a little something, right. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things, one of the benefits that you have is just you have way more grace with a mortgage company than you have with a landlord, hands down. So okay, then the next question I have that you had posted that I want you to expound on, is it cheaper to rent? Wow. So that's a tough one, and that's a tough one for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, we're doing apples to apples. Normally, it's going to be cheaper to buy if you're talking about cash out of pocket. The other thing is, we're talking about qualifying for a rental. And I'm just going to, as an aside, I mean, let me throw this out there too, and this is something specific to our community. I just assume, I always speak to our community first, and anybody else that get it, I'm with it. But specifically to our community, when it comes to renting, we tend to be a lot more open to roommates and things like that than when it comes to buying a home.
Right.
And so when we're talking about a rental, okay, boom, I ain't got no problem busting this, $2,000 down the middle. Boom, you get this room, I get that room. That's cool. We spend $800 or I said $2,000, I guess $1,000 a piece plus utilities, whatever case may be. But when it comes to a mortgage, if you qualify for $2,000 a month mortgage, which is a $300,000 home, which could be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, or a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever it is. It's just like this thing in our mind, like, well, I'm not renting. I'm not letting somebody live in my house with me now. My house got to be to myself. What you mean? You know what I mean? It's just like, nope. Roommate is absolutely out. Right, so if you keep the mind of just looking at it as housing, to me, it's more beneficial to have somebody spending $1,000 a month in a home that you own, and they're helping pay down the balance, while you're getting the benefit of appreciation, because now the house is increasing over value, and if it didn't this year, over time it will. So now you're talking about somebody's paying down that asset versus having somebody just splitting rent on something that you'll never own. But then the other side of that is qualifying. So a lot of these places, if you're talking about a nice place, you might be able to find a dump somewhere, roaches, rats, whatever the case may be, and they're like, no, we don't have any standards, no requirements. If you agree to stay here, then you can live here. But a lot of these, and if you look at, just get on Zillow or any type of realtor.com, or Zillow's a really good one because they show you, I'm familiar with that. They'll show you what the credit score requirement is, what the income requirement is. These people are like, you got to make 3 times the rent. You got to have a 660 plus credit score and all these other things just to qualify for the home. In addition to that, even if there's somebody that's not making any money, not contributing any money to the actual rent, don't have a job, nothing. If they're over 18, their credit matters. They got to be able to meet the same credit threshold as the principal person who actually has a job, is paying all the bills, etc. Anybody over 18. got to meet these same metrics. So if you're talking about, decent housing, it is a lot of times harder to qualify for a rental than it is a mortgage. Like I said, 580 credit score, 3.5% down. And some of these people want first month, last month, and security. So you might be talking about, $12,000 just to move into a house, or $6,000 or $4,000, whereas you can move into a home that you're purchasing and potentially have 100% financing. So that's real cash out of pocket. But on a month-on-month basis, the other side of it is, okay, let's say that you were able to move into both a home that you purchased and a rental. And
right.
Both of them cost you $5,000 out of pocket to move into it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we ignore the grace period that you have as far as when payments due, when payment is late, deferment, all those different things. The rental rate increase. So even if it's cheaper for you to rent right now, what's it going to be next year? At renewal. And if you have a situation where you're renting and they say, hey, we want to sell this property, and the person that's buying the property says, hey, well, you know what? I don't want a tenant. I want to live here, or I want a different tenant, whatever the case may be. So when you get into when you have a house and the security that you have, they're not doing regular credit checks to see, hey, is your credit still what you made it before? So let's say that you bought the house and you said, you know what? I'm gonna liquidate my 401k. I'm gonna start that business that I wanted to start. I'm still gonna pay my mortgage and whatnot, but I want to take a chance. So now you're like, I done started that business. I liquidated my 401k or whatever, and okay, now I'm running up the credit cards. My credit, I done missed payments, but that's cool because I know this business is really gonna work for me. It's all good. It's okay. My credit score like a 500 now, but it's cool. Now, if you get in that situation as a renter,
mm-hmm.
and they decide they don't want to keep you as a tenant, and you got to find a new place, and your credit score done got beat to hell because of the new business that you were trying to start.
Right.
A lot of the corporations they don't want to hear your sad story. They're like, well, you're not bringing that here. I don't care what your reason is. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. Right.
So that's why I say it's a loaded question, dollar for dollar. You could argue either way. Right now in this moment, the problem is the future as a renter is so unpredictable. Next year, unless you get some type of subsidization from the government, that's a totally different thing. But if you're just talking about you got to pay your own way the whole way, unless you're just living for this year, then 9 times, well, more often than not, it's going to be cheaper as a buyer than as a renter.
Well, this is the final one I got for you. Just for coming off your page, you had another one that says, "Find the money, find the money." What you mean by find the money?
Let me think that for a second, because I know what video you're talking about. I don't remember what I was speaking about specifically in that video. But when it comes down to find the money,
mm-hmm.
to me,
and you were more or less thinking about trying to, I guess trying to steer away from getting so many loans, just trying to get the money yourself. You know what I'm saying? As much as you can. You know what I mean? That's really what I got from it from the video.
So in general, this is kind of how I look at it in general, right? Mm-hmm. I have this rule mm-hmm. that when it was given to me, the way it was told to me was every adversity brings with itself a seed of greater or equal opportunity. Mm. And I modify that rule for myself, and this is a part of my family creed. And I tell this to my wife and my little boy. He don't understand it right now because he's 2, right. But every adversity brings with itself a seed of greater opportunity. I don't want equal. I want greater.
That's right.
All right. And what I mean by find the money is it's a thing that I say or that we should say to get our minds kind of moving, because when we do get all the answers and we go and say, okay, what is it going to take for me to get this house or me to get qualified for a loan?
Right.
And then somebody put the numbers out there. Okay, well, you're going to need $5,000 down payment or whatever it is, $10,000 down payment or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Once you actually start focusing on finding the money and just looking at the math and how I can do this instead of immediately saying, oh, I don't have that, there's a lot of things that we can do from a creativity standpoint, from how we structure an offer, what we ask the seller for, whether that be seller paid closing costs, whether that be can we get a gift from a family member, because a lot of loans do allow for family members to supply gifts. 401ks will allow you to take money out with penalty free to buy a home, whereas otherwise you'd have a penalty a lot of times to take money out for other things. But there's people who don't even know how much they have in their 401k. You know, can they put that money back later? Can we do a 100% financing? So it's just one of those things about, a lot of people say, I'm not going to try because I don't have the money right now. Or they say, I'm not going to try because I want my credit score to get higher, or whatever the case may be. But it's just getting yourself in that mindset of where is the money, and so where's the money for the acquisition, but also thinking about, okay, if I wait on this, or if I go ahead and do this now, how does this set me up a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now? And so am I looking at, okay, I'm talking to my realtor and I'm going, hey man, you know I don't have the ability to buy a rental property because I don't have 25% to put down or 20% to put down, or I don't have the ability to do that right now.
Right.
But I know right now with my 600 credit score, I could buy a house and move in with 3% down payment or 3.5% down payment or whatever it is. I want to buy a house, really not that concerned about what it is. I can thug it out for a little while. I want to buy a house that I know, obviously I can't tell you as a realtor, I can't give you the guarantee, hey, this house is going to appreciate and be worth X, Y, Z. I'd be lying if I told you that. But looking at the statistics, looking at the neighborhood, looking at the economic life of this neighborhood or homes that were built at this time, I just want to be in a place that is growing, that's thriving, that I know is going to appreciate, so that I can use that money, leverage this property, whether it be through cash out or equity in the property, through holding it, to be able to purchase another property. So it's just about being able to find the money, because I've had some amazing people acquire, and I'm talking $1 million worth of property, hotel cleaners, daycare workers, and I ain't talking about daycare owners. I'm talking about just child care workers working in daycare, taking care of the babies. People not making a whole lot of money, but were able to find the money, find the leverage. In every situation you're in, you're always looking for leverage. What's your leverage? And if you don't have leverage, get some leverage about yourself. So when I think of finding money, I think about opening my mind, expanding my parachute to what the possibility is, so that we can make something happen, as opposed to just being, oh, I'm rejected, that type of thing. So that's where I'm at when I say find the money.
Okay. That's heavy. I like how you broke that down. That's real. You know what I mean? That was even more in depth than what I would have thought, but that even gives us more self-confidence as a people. You know what I mean? So it's even deeper to me than just, okay, we buying a home. You giving somebody just more, even self-respect, with just having to go and say, okay, I'm getting this. Man, you don't gotta go through that, man. There's other ways that you can do things. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Basically, That's what I'm getting from that. You know what I mean? Okay.
Absolutely.
And I know you giving me some time, and I don't want to keep you too long, but I definitely want, before you go, I gotta touch on this, because you did something to me that's so amazing, bro, that I very rarely see. We know it's a couple brothers here may have made the same move. I don't really see it like that, but you did something heavy in our neighborhoods, and just our walks, just businesses that we got around, especially dealing with the smoke shop. Like, you got the Premier Smoke Shop. We see a lot of either Caucasians, or we see a lot of Arabs, or, you know what I'm saying, those type of people, Indians in our community. They really holding out on those type of spots, those type of shops. You know what I mean? On every corner. You know what I mean? And you got some people, some brothers that I spoke to about that, and I said the same thing to them. You know what I'm saying, man, you got these Arabs, you got Arabs, Indians. I said, man, we can do the same thing. I mean, even with the liquor stores, all of that. So brother, like, oh man, I don't want to put my hands in. I don't want to get that to my people. I say, yeah, but that's a double standard, because if you don't sell it, shit, you know what I'm saying? What you gonna let them come into the neighborhood because it's people of us like me that indulge in a smoke shop. You know what I'm saying? You
Right,
know what I mean?
right,
So you know what I mean, just because you may not, you know what I mean, or got your own type of morals or whatever you feel like, or you on your health tip, whatever you on, you know what I'm saying, you don't want to do whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's still a majority of people that want to, and we want to support our own people when we're going there. You go in some of these Arab, these Indian shops, man, they got expired candy and honey buns, have been there 40 years, man. You know what I'm saying? The cigars and stuff you get out there, you know what I'm saying? They stale, you know what I mean? You seem like they done got them out of warehouse that been in there 50, 100 years, man. And one thing I heard about you, man, good, just on the back end, man, I hear very, very good things about your shop, man. When I go look on the Google reviews, man, you got top reviews. Everybody's showing how much love, how much um, um, even information that you give the people when you go in there, man. You know what I'm saying? Because I know you also got TACA, and I love going to your page because I love seeing you educate these fools. You know what I'm saying on what they smoking and what they putting in their body. And people don't know if you go to the ticker and check out. You know what I'm saying? And check out his Instagram sites, man. Burd on there, man, breaking down like a chemist on this thing, man. You know what I'm saying? He telling you what's going down, and that's what I love because we don't got that in our community, man. They got so much people that come in and want to take advantage, but they don't tell us this. You know what I'm saying? You people go in blind. You know what I'm saying? They don't know what they buying, what they getting. But I just love that you and your wife, man, you as a black man got a shop in our community that that's supplying us, bro. You know what I'm saying? And we don't have to look
right.
to the other man. When I come to you, I can see my own brother in there. You know what I'm saying? So what made you say I want to get it? Because that's a big offshoot of all the things that you've been doing. What made you say, man, you know what? I want to put my foot into this business right here and step into this field. What made you and your wife decide to do that?
So I really gotta, pop my collar to my wife because this was her dream, right? And her dream didn't start off as a necessarily being a smoke shop. It was originally, and this is why we call it smoke fetish, and that fetish is a big part of what we do there. So we have a lot of the sex toys, sex
I saw that. I gotta
yeah,
take note of this.
yeah. So
Me and
that's
my
a
wife definitely gotta come home to.
yeah. So my wife, she originally she was like wanting to be in the fetish space, wanting to open up a fetish shop. And so we started off looking, for locations and whatnot for the fetish shop. And we were like, well, why don't we do, the smoke with it? We decided we we're going to marry the smoke with the fetish side of it and be unique, a place where we can go. Because at the end of the day, we're looking now. I know in 20, 30 years from now, somebody going to watch this video, right? And they're going to do like, now, if y'all don't know, if y'all feel a certain way about Bill Cosby, hey, that's your own thing. But back then when Bill Cosby doing this thing, popping a Quaalude or whatever it was back then, that was like what you did
right
before you did how we grew up. And it might be like, well, we're gonna drink something, then we can go handle our business, or we're gonna smoke something and then we go handle our business. On 30 years, somebody might look at it and be like, well, if you smoke with a woman before y'all did whatever, I mean, that's different. Giving her Quaalude. So I'm not getting to that, but my point being, for us, we knew that, a part of, the experience, the sexual experience, heightening that sexual experience. Yeah, I mean, that's is what it is. So we felt like it would be perfect to marry those two together, all in one location, the whole 9 yards. And so that was my wife's idea. Then that kind of morphed into the what it is today. And as we started the journey of learning about it and going through the process of opening up and understanding what the being players in the hemp space, because the cannabis is a lot of what we do. I mean, it's probably 50% of our business.
Oh wow!
Just being in that legal cannabis space. And so there is a lot of education that has to happen for people, because people hear they hear a term like,
are they coming in there, Burd? Are they buying up? Are they buying that legal cannabis? Are they buying it up like that?
They're buying it up, man. They're buying it up. And the cool part about it, man, if you look through, and I know you have, if you look through like our Google reviews and stuff like that, you'll see that, man, probably I don't know, man. Probably 50% of
Mm-hmm.
our cannabis customers are people who are either dealing with cancer or some type of
That's I saw.
terminal.
I saw
So
that.
these are people who can't sleep without it.
Right. I
You
saw
know,
that.
I mean, these are people who it's not legal for them to get this stuff in South Carolina any other way. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have people who, I mean, we got to let them know when the shipment comes in. You know what I'm saying? Like they need it to sleep. You know what I'm saying? They can't
Right.
function. People like, I can't feel
Right.
my feet. I can't,
Right.
just all these different things that
Mm-hmm.
health conditions that people are dealing with. And then all the way up to, we got clients or customers that are almost 100 years old
Wow.
that
Wow.
are using, whether it be the CBD rub-ons or
Mm-hmm.
the edibles,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people when they're going through these chemo and different things like that lose their appetite. This is restoring appetite, pain management, etc. So all those different things. So as we were just kind of building up in that space, and we started to realize, like, man, should we doing the Lord's work out here, man? There's
Yes,
so
you
many
are. Yes,
people.
you are, brother. Yes, you are.
You know, you have people that come in there that's stressed out, had a long day,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me of being in the barbershop, man. When people telling you about their problems, and you're like, shh,
Yep.
you know. And so what we focus on is one of the big things that we focus on, not just education, obviously online, but educating people in stores. So, and then we have a good understanding of, if you come in here and tell us our problem, and we're not doctors or scientists,
Right, of course, right.
But we focus on products that are cultivated to deal with a particular thing. So
So
we
what you
have,
mean by that? So if I come in there and say, "Oh man, I'm having a problem with my anxiety," or like you said, I
yeah,
can't sleep, or nausea, you gonna point me to the right direction.
I mean, we're gonna have edibles for you for sleep. We're gonna have it CBD with no THC for those who still got it, that are subject to drug tests. We're gonna have with THC. We're gonna have if you're looking for upper downer, if you're looking for something for intimacy, if you're looking for something for focus, determination. So just having an understanding of the cannabinoids and how you marry the cannabinoids and cultivate them properly, so that we can, and then pair them together so that we can deliver a proper experience, is what we really pride ourselves on, being able to educate folks. So we have it in every form. Water soluble is kind of my thing. I can't really do the edibles because it lasts too long for me.
Right.
But for the drinks,
You feel like
we
me,
have,
man. You like me, man. I ordered some edibles, man, from a girl that I met online, man. And man, my wife, she was in there chewing them down, man. I couldn't take them, man. I had a damn brown. It seemed like, man, I was floating, man, in the air. Like I couldn't even lay down straight. I was just uncomfortable. I'm old school. Let me get smoked. I'm cool with
that. Yeah. That's a whole another experience,
right.
man.
It is.
But we have that, and then of course, like I said, the fetish part is a big part of what we do. So everything from toys to, and our thought process really, man, is just, we were thinking about a few things, like what would make a perfect date night? What would be a perfect one night stand? You know what I mean? Like, if you were gonna have a one night stand, where's a place you can go? Boom, let's go right here. I'll get whatever. You know what I'm saying? We got a date night. We can go get it, the little sex cards or whatever, the combo packs. We can get some honey packs. We can get a little
you know what I'm saying? And a 3.5. Come on now.
You know what I'm saying? So that was the big thing, man. Making sure there was a one-stop shop for folks. Obviously, you could be one side or the other. You could just partake in the fetish side. You could just partake in the smoke side. But for those that want to do both, we want to be able to come in there and you be able to go in there with your lady, get you some vibrating panties or whatever you need to do. You know what I'm saying? And well, one of the biggest things, one of our biggest sellers is probably of the toys is probably the rose. So that rose is
copping that rose. That rose,
yeah. So you get flower and you get flower. You know what I'm saying? So we got it all, man. Get you some bud, get you a rose, and man,
yes, sir.
So, but yeah, so we wanted to be in that space, man. We realized that there wasn't a lot of black folks in that space. And man, I got to pop my collar to the community because they really supported. They really supported us big time, That's right. And
like I said, bro, even those type of spaces. I just was in Nashville last month with my wife, man. I hit a couple of them spots while I was out there with, like I said, Indian, white. I didn't see no brothers or nobody holding down this space, and I was like, man, this these people coming in here in droves. I said, man, this is something, man, we gotta tap into. And this is, like you said, at this point, this is a legal market. So before, this is something I want to ask you too. Okay, now that I know that you're doing it, and you dwelling in this legal market, and we know we in a, what they call a Bible Belt down here. You know what I'm saying? We got these old school politicians. Hopefully they get the hell up out of there, and we get some young blood that can understand what the hell going on, which is going to happen eventually, because they see the money that's coming in, because it's all about money right now, especially with these greedy ones we got in here now. Hopefully they see what's going on, and it becomes the advantage for us. You know what I mean?
Right.
In the end. But do you think you and your wife will dwell into, if it becomes a legal space where, like, God grow houses, gardens, you can grow your own, you can have actual, like I said, not saying that the THC, we know what the science between the THCA, but I mean just the straight cut and dry THC. Do you and your old lady, do you plan on stepping into that space if that ends up happening, if the laws become legal?
Yeah, so I'm gonna answer your question, and I'm gonna add a little something to that too.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're in the cannabis space to stay. You know what I mean? So, the only thing that could possibly keep us, out from a growing standpoint and just expanding, scaling to something larger would be, this is one of the things that has happened.
Right.
In different markets is when they come in with the regulations, they want you to have so much liquidity in order to get a license to distribute. Right. And so we're just priced out of the market, and we're just priced out of the market. But, so long as that's not the case, we're going to be in that space. But I also want to say this, right? So this is the big thing right here. Just from an education standpoint, I just dropped this little tidbit, and you know this already. But when it comes to what cannabis is and what, when we say legal, what that means versus what's illegal, essentially in the eyes of the law, and it's really this simple.
School me, bro. School me, family.
It's really this simple. So what we sell is cannabis. What we sell is considered weed, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Of course.
In the eyes of the law, anything over 0.3% THC by dry weight, so when they weigh it dry, is considered weed. Anything under that is considered hemp. Doesn't matter in the eyes of the law what plant it came from. So you got cannabis, that is the plant, and then you got a subspecies that is marijuana, a subspecies that's hemp. The reason why the hemp cultivation is what we focus on the hemp side is because the hemp, you get way more bud before the A, which all cannabis has a carbon bond, that A carbon bond. Right. And then you decarb it by either aging it or you decarb it by heat. So you cannot smoke THCA. It's impossible, because as soon as you heat it, it becomes straight THC. Right. So the reason why we focus on hemp, because you get way more. Now, also the hemp has the higher content of CBD than the marijuana subspecies does. Right. So from all those healing whatever that people desire from CBD, you get a way higher content of it on the hemp side.
Right. Okay.
Now, Now that's just from the legality standpoint. So the law is looking at it and going, hey, we don't care where it came from. It could come from a bubblegum tree. If it's more than 0.3% by dry weight of THC, then it's considered weed. So as soon as you light it, it is now weed and illegal per se. But at that point, you got a receipt, you bought it, it's legal. And so that's a great area where we are now. And my point saying that is this. Now, it does take a lot of money to play in this space, for sure. It took more money than I thought it would. And if I knew how much it was going to take, then I don't know I'm just kidding. But now it definitely is. It takes a lot of money to play in this space. But my point saying that is this. From a grow farm, et cetera, man, there have been players in this space, which has been surprising, that we've been able to we've educated a lot of people and been able, or had to, in some regard, to educate people on what THCA is, because people were like, Dad, I don't want that, what they call it, diet weed. They call it
right.
made in a lab, and there's
Hey,
none of that, right?
let me tell you, I'm not gonna lie. I myself talked a little trash until I
Uh-huh.
indulged, and I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now, what I noticed was some, maybe it's like you said, because maybe you can explain this to me, because some I thought was a little better than us. I think I preferred the THCA better than, because they had like the Delta 8, Delta 9. Tell me, do you got time to me? Tell me a little quick difference between that, because I thought I preferred that versus those. Seemed like the THCAs I felt more home, like that. This was more me. This was already,
Right.
you know what I mean? This felt like what I'm used to. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Everything else seemed like, I'm not gonna say it didn't hit me, but it tasted funny. It was just, it just wasn't, it wasn't the same. Can you give us a little education on that?
Yeah. So that's a great question, first of all,
Yes,
right?
Sir. Yes, sir.
So when you get into, so it's hard because, or I guess the challenging part about it is we are having a chemistry level conversation. Not you and I. I'm talking about when you get into the deltas and whatever case may be. So people are like Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, all this stuff, and all it is
right.
It's really the position on the chain and cultivation, right? So, but Delta 9 in general, because some people say, well, I like Delta 9 one, I like THCA,
right.
Well, I like.
So you heard what I said. You heard people say these things. Do what I said.
Yeah, absolutely. But before I got into the space, I ain't know the difference. I'm like, I'm not smoking that stuff. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'd rather buy it from the person who pull it out their pocket with lint. And I don't know what's in it. I trust that more. You know what I'm saying? They're on the lab test. So like I get it. So that's one of the things. Education is one of those things that we've had to come up on. Or one of the things we've had to do, and it's been a pleasure doing it. But the Delta 9 is the scientific name for THC. So when someone says I prefer Delta 9 or I prefer THC over Delta 9, it's like, that's like saying you prefer Burd over Daniel.
Got you. Okay, I got you.
Burd is my nickname. Okay. We talking about the same person.
Talking about the same thing, right?
Right. But because there's such a lack of education around it, it's just one of those things where in that space, though, when you're talking about the THC space, and we just call it THC because all of our products, as far as THCA or whatever, all of it's got THC in it, and we can even tell you what content of THC you have in it, what the percentage is, and then when that carbon bond is released, how much what your experience is going to be on it. But the thing is, when most folks who are smoking street weed, is what we'll call it for purposes of conversation, they don't really know what they're smoking. They don't know if it's a sativa. They don't know if it's an indica. They don't know what strain it is. They're like, I want gas. And that's about as far as they go for most folks on what they're actually smoking. So it's not like your dealer who don't know where it's coming from. He got, what I'm saying, he got what he got, and then he like, I'm gonna go and sell it. This the price for it. This, that, whatever.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He don't have no labs on it. He don't have anything. Can't tell you if it's got cyanide in it. Couldn't tell you if it got horse manure. Just nothing, right?
Nothing.
So somebody go to a smoke shop, or we feel like, and this is what our folks have told us, is that the experience at our shop is more dispensary than anything. So especially folks from Boston, Colorado, LA out there, they're like, this gives us that back home dispensary feel, right?
Oh wow.
And so
right.
And so when we're out here and we're showing people different things and the different strains, and some people want to be like, they want to call it a flavor. I'm like, well, it ain't a flavor. Don't mean that it doesn't have a particular flavor, or it doesn't have a particular terpene to give you a particular scent, etc. But just understand that we're talking about strains right now, right? And so someone might smoke one strain or something, don't know the percentage, don't know the strain, don't know if it's a sativa, indica, hybrid, or anything. And compare that to the best gas they ever had, and they're like, "Oh, this ain't the same." You know what I mean? It's like the amount of strains that exist in this space is bananas. And then when you get into hybrids, you're talking about cultivating even more strains and different potencies. And so we're talking about dealing with, we have waxes, potent concentrations, etc. That you can have. So it's kind of, it's one of those things where it's a little bit difficult to have to smoke one blunt or joint and just say, "Oh no, this is different," or "I didn't get this," or whatever case may be. It's like if you had that happen to you with street weed, would you have never smoked again? It's like, I smoked this thing one time. I took one drag and I ain't feel it, so I'm done with it, kind of thing. But from a scientific thing, to just keep it simple, man, this is the reason that you have that A carbon bond at the time in which it is cultivated. And remember, decarbon happens through aging as well. So by the time you rip it out of packet, it's probably the tendency, the potency is probably over the legal limit anyway. The point is, what we're doing, that carbon bond, all it does, which of course is released as soon as it hits fire, and a lot of it's released by the time you get it. But what we're doing is, what that does for us to allow us to sell it legally.
Right.
It's just that simple. It's just that simple. It's the same plant. It's all cannabis. THC.
So will you remain in this space, even though like you said, we are, like you said.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. I never got to that. Yeah, we're gonna remain in that space, and
regardless if they like you say, they let the floodgates open, everything is whatever, you know what I'm saying, you know what I mean, without the technicalities, will you still remain? Do you think it'll still be a solid space with people that say, I'm still going to come through and get this, you know what I'm saying?
Great question. So we're always going to be prepared to pivot, and whether that pivot means change products or close doors, change industries, whatever it is, we always going to pivot. We never going to die until we actually die, right? Sir. So from the legality standpoint of it, if we're able to go into the THC space without, or I'll say the marijuana space, and not just hemp, then we'll do that. But this is something that we need to understand. I'll make 2 points to that. I'm glad you reminded me of this. 2 points I want to make about that. Number one is this: if you ever go into a dispensary, most people don't, but if you ever go to a dispensary and you look at your COAs or your labs or the content breakdown on the bud that you're buying, you're going to see a high content of THCA. Yeah. So this whole THCA thing ain't just like, oh, that's just what the fake weed is. Go to your dispensary.
No, and I'm gonna tell you, you're telling the truth, because I was in Vegas. And when I went this was my first time in the dispensaries ever, you know what I'm saying? I was excited, you know what I mean? And just like you just said about the flavors, just going back to that, I mean, they had a damn book, like just millions. They had it was a damn iPad you could just scroll, you know what I'm saying? But that's one thing I noticed. It would give the breakdown, and this something that like, it's like if you don't know, like you say, you almost playing a guessing game, you know what I'm saying? So so it had the THCA, it had the CBD, and it had something else that it had just broke down out of the weed. And I said, it's very interesting. I said, so to be honest, I said, the people that have these shops, they done found a loophole, you know what I'm saying, in order to shake this, you know what I'm saying? So
exactly, because it's the same stuff they're selling in the dispensary, but they're not leading with the THCA type thing, because we know as soon as you mention the A on the THC, our folks be like, man, I ain't messing with that stuff. But let me tell you this though. This is the second point I want to make. But to answer your question, we're going to stay in the space regardless, whether that means, it may come a point to where it just depends on how long this takes. That could it never happen? Possibly, not likely. I mean, they could just say weed is legal the whole 9 yards. But the other side of it is they put a lot of different parameters in when you're dealing with weed, like, oh, you need to buy it in cash. You can't use a card for this and all these other things. So it will depend on how the market responds to that, right? Because we don't know if the market is going to say, it's been so long that we've been able to purchase this with a debit card, credit card. We finally understand that it's the same thing, and we like doing it this way. You know what I'm saying? Our response to it is going to be highly dependent upon what either the market is telling us or what we believe the market will say, which is going to determine the move. But the other thing I want to tell folks is there's been we talk about our people, right? But a lot of the white folks or the Arabs or whatever the case may be have been playing in this space in Charleston since 2018. But last 7 years, we just got the space last year, right? The point saying that is there's a huge opportunity between now and we don't know when it's going to be that weed is going to become legal and just we're gonna be dealing with marijuana and not just hemp in the state legally. But I don't want, what I would hate to happen, or what I would love to happen, is for our brothers and our sisters to say, hey, there's an opportunity in this hemp space. Don't have to be opening a smoke shop or whatever the case may be, or a dispensary like us. It could be, I want to be a grow house. You can be that in the state of South Carolina. There's a huge opportunity here that our people can take advantage of, instead of sitting on the sideline and going, because once it becomes, in my belief, and I could be wrong, this is speculative, so don't take this and run with it, but my belief is when we do get that marijuana thumbs up, the regulations, because hemp is highly unregulated. There are regulations, but in comparison to marijuana, is highly unregulated if we're comparing the two. But I don't want my people to be so ignorant to the opportunity that they say, well, when marijuana get in, I won't get in the game then. And then they got a liquidity. You got to have this much liquidity. You got to have a compliance officer. You got to have this, that, and third. Mm-hmm. When right now, in comparison, it's the Wild Wild West. You could be out here in the game. And not only that,
that's a great point, Burd. That's a great point you just made. That's a great point.
And the people love it, bro. Because half the people, I'm gonna venture to say half, they don't know this, but there's a lot of fellas. And you might know some people, you may not, but there's a lot of people out here who are dealers, right?
Oh yeah, they come in to get that. They come in to get that THC.
That's what they selling. Oh, yeah, but they're not telling. They're not telling their people that.
I believe. Listen, I know these jokers out here, these hustlers. I know somebody that came up and said, you know what? Why would I go and run and pay this or this or like, it's not that I know the prices are different. The prices probably maybe just the same. But why would I go and risk going here when I can just go here and get it and it's the same smoke and they still smoking and I'm still winning? You know,
and the end user would not know the difference. Would not know the difference, because half time when they get it, they don't even tell you what strain. It's just like, hey man, this what it is. This how much it is. This how many ounces you got.
Especially older man. I don't give a damn about that, dude. You know what I'm saying? They call it whatever, rhinoceros feet. I don't give a damn. You know what I'm saying? I just want to smoke. You know what I'm saying?
That's it. That's it. So there's a huge opportunity in this space right now for our people to jump in on many different levels and get involved in the making the money of it. And I think there's too many people that's got a negative mindset about it, negative thought in their mind about it, instead of looking at the opportunity that's in front of them and saying, damn, let me get some of that, man. Why would I wait until it gets hard? You know, doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that don't make any sense. But our people, man, so opinionated sometimes, you know what I'm saying, until you talk yourself right out of deal, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I pop my collar. I will pop my collar to us, because our folks have shown up, and anytime we've had an event and we've done things like puff paint, we have puff yoga, puff Pilates, whatever. We sell out every time we do an event. And most of the time we do an event, we sell out in the first 48 hours.
Wow.
And then they're showing up and supporting us, 7 days a week. And I couldn't be, don't get me wrong now. I'd like even more business, but right. I'm very grateful for the love and support and the promotion and the sharing it with other people and bringing people and the folks who have really grabbed a hold of the brand and just really just effing with us that way. I appreciate that. And we also have a lot of white folks, brown folks, just different folks who really mess with us, and we appreciate that. Our business is good for everyone, but we appreciate, to the moon and back, the way our folks have shown up, and really this is one of those things, and not to go into the politics of things, but what this is, I would probably say this is one of the things that we haven't fully seen it, because Trump's only been in office for a very short amount of time. But I can remember when Trump was last in office, how on cold black people got. It was like the first time they had an actual face to put on white supremacy, and because of that, black folks got ultra on code and group economics, etc. And I feel as though when Biden came in office, that kind of relaxed. Like, okay, now we we can relax now. We can go back to spending our money with white folks. It's almost like the vibe that happened.
Yeah.
And I think with Trump being back in office and black folks being afraid of this or concerned, or he's doing this, the orange
You
man,
get your
all those other
mind
things
right.
they're saying, that I think that it codifies the black community.
Yeah.
And I think
I love the way you put that just now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You made it just in little words. Y'all stop being so doggone comfortable. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Because you shouldn't have got comfortable before. You know what I mean? Just like Burd just said, I hope this gets everybody back on code, because that's the number one thing that we not on, and we got to get back on that. You know what I'm saying? You know,
and we have businesses in our community, man. We have to support them, and that's really what I'll say our neighborhoods. I guess we don't really have Dr. Claude Anderson said we don't have community, we got neighborhoods, but having black businesses in there, because we employ black people, we are black people, we contribute to the economics of the neighborhood, and we want to keep it clean, keep it looking good, and contribute to those that are around us. But I'm looking forward to for the levee to break. And just, as folks continue to learn about us, like I said, we will hit a year old next month. So, we're still babies in this thing. But I think one of the good, and this is just for black folks in general, I'm like, hey, regardless of what your political stance is, whether you agree with Trump, don't agree with Trump, whatever it is, if you thought about opening a business or whatever the case may be, and that business is a potentially, not that it's a black business in the sense that it's only for black folks, but if it's a business that black people can patronize,
right.
Because we open a tanning salon, that probably ain't for black people. But if it's a business that black folks can patronize, then this is probably a great opportunity to do it, because I think the more and more force that Trump applies in general, regardless of whether or not it's beneficial to black folks or hurtful, I think the mass is going to say this guy is against us. And this is a great opportunity, in my opinion. I hope the floodgates open for us, that black people say, well, there's a lot of smoke shops in this town, but I'm going to that one,
Right.
As an FU to Trump or whoever. And I'm like, hey, come, we'll take it gladly. So it's a great opportunity for all of us. Like I said in earlier, I look at every adversity as an opportunity, for greater. And so
I love that, man.
Yeah, so I'm just looking forward to the next opportunity or the opportunity for greater. And I'm always looking and an expectation that it's coming, or it's here, or it came. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah.
Man, Burd, man, I appreciate, like I said, I ain't gonna hold you too long. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. I appreciate the game you came and dropped tonight. Like I said, like I always tell everybody else, man, I'm gonna give you the last words. You know what I'm saying? And please let them know where the shop is. You know what I mean? Let them know how to reach you with the real estate. People that want to buy. And I want to bring you back on, because we didn't get to talk about the Airbnb. You know what I'm saying? How people can get involved in that. You know what I mean? And how people can get involved in opening their own business. But I want to bring you back if you let me have you back, man, for a part 2 later on. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Anything for you, Doc.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. Like I said, I'm gonna listen to the last word, man. I appreciate your Burd, man. You know what I'm saying, for coming through.
For sure. So you can find us on Instagram. The smoke shop is Smoke Fetish CHS, Smoke Fetish CHS on Instagram. We're on Facebook as well, and that CHS stands for Charleston. You can find me on Instagram at Daniel Burd Sells Charleston. You can find me on Facebook, the same, Daniel Burd Sells Charleston. Find us on Google. Great reviews there for Daniel Burd Sells Charleston, as well as Smoke Fetish. And we're located at 1815, so 1815 Reynolds Avenue in North Charleston. That's right off of Sproul Avenue, or next to Rebel Taquieta, if you're familiar. Right near the old naval base. So that's where you can find us. As far as parting words, obviously, Eddie, I want to appreciate you, man, for bringing me on. I appreciate you. I love what you're doing here, man. I love the content. So I'm proud of you, and I'm excited that you felt that I was worthy of gracing your stage, gracing your page. You know what I'm saying? But to my folks out there, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out here with real estate. in whichever form that you want to play, whether that be buying it, selling it, using it, leveraging it, you know, and whatever situation you're in right now, there's a way to get to the next, you know. So if you need some help with that or you want to talk about it, hit me up. Is there any moves we can make? Don't ever feel like you're stuck, because there's always an option. There's always an out. We just got to open the mind so that we can see it. And if you guys, you know, need to come through, get you a pre-roll, get you some flour, get you a vape, or whatever the case may be, come and see us at.
When I come back home now, I need you to put together me a pack, because I'm gonna come through now. You know what I'm saying? I need something now. You know.
Hey, we right here, man. We right here. So my folks, FBAs, I'm proud of y'all. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of all Black folk. And I guess the last thing that I will say is we're real close, family, and I think that that reparations is on the way. Don't give up the fight. It's owed to us. We ain't begging for nothing. This is a debt that has to be paid, and we gonna get that check, and that's gonna happen. So that's it, my brother.
Hey, I appreciate you. And what y'all, if you missed what Burd said, regardless, I'm gonna have all the information under the video. You know what I'm saying? The location for the shop, the address, and how you can reach them, man, for the real estate. And Burd, he coming for a part 2. He gonna give y'all some game on, you know, how to get involved in these investment properties. You know, be it Airbnb, whatever you do, but we gonna do it. Y'all hear my little baby calling me in the back, so you know what I'm saying. But Burd, I appreciate you, man. It's much love, man. You know what I'm saying. You be safe, man. I'll catch you next time.
Yes, sir.
All right. Peace.
Peace.